Hi everybody, welcome to my ridge field. I have a big problem up here and I'm going to explain it, and the worst part about it is it's all my fault. I bought this farm 6 years ago and it was way more expensive than what I can afford on my salary. So I knew right away I had to have a plan to make this farm self-sustain and make its own payment. There was no grass on it at the time. This ridge field that you see here was all timber. So there was, and it goes way over there and all the way around. And it was about 20 acres of a flat ridge with pretty good soil on it. I did soil test first. It wasn't very acidic. It was only calling for about 1,200 pounds of lime per acre, which 2,000 per acre is about standard. And it was only calling for 130 pounds of fertilizer per acre, which is, I mean, sometimes they call for up to 300. The mistakes I made was I seeded it and with endophyte free fescue, which sprouted and did okay, and I only kept stock off of it for about 6 months because I thought I could maybe make the payment with cow-calf pairs, and cattle was just the wrong choice for this young a property. I should have let it grow a couple of years before I grazed it. Then the next worst thing I did after that was I was a firebug. My grandpa loved to burn everything on his farm. And he'd burn the weeds, he'd burn the cedars, and burn, and that puts, you know, and the school of thought, the old wise tale is that burning just puts, you know, potash into your soil, and it puts, you know, all the it's good for it, and it warms the, you know, it kills off the weeds. Well, boy, Blondie's awful lovey today. Well, that's not always true. As you can see here, what I did was I ended up burning off all my carbon, as they would call it. So since this has turned out so poorly, I started doing a lot of research, and I found a man named Greg Judy on the internet who basically explains all the problems and mistakes that I've made thinking I was doing good. I put a bunch of fertilizer and lime down the first 2-3 years. Well, every winter I'd burn, and that would just put all of that was in the foliage into the atmosphere instead of letting it compost back into my soil, building thatch and building good soil composition. You dig around up here, there ain't an earthworm to be found. This is the part that I cleared last. It never did grow. It's kind of covered in just, you know, there's a lot of moss. Where it ain't moss, it's broom sedge. And where it ain't moss or broom sedge, it's dirt, bare dirt. So I have a lot of problems here. Let's go on over to a spot that was cleared about a year before this area, and I'll show you what the problems are over there. Okay, as you can see over here, a little bit taller cover, but you still see a lot of bare dirt, a lot of broom sedge, no grass, a lot of rock, and a lot of weeds, but mostly a lot of bare dirt for a pasture that's 6 years old. What I'm gonna do, wrong, right, or indifferent, there's also a lot of stump holes. When you clear timber, for several years afterwards, the stump holes where you've pushed out the timber settle in and make it really rough to brush hog your pasture. Some areas are worse than others. The main flat spot up here has got a lot of stump holes in it. So I'm gonna have a dozer with a 6-way blade come in this week and recut and basically turn over all of this broom sedge into the earth. Then I'm gonna reseed everything, not probably as heavy as it needs because I can't afford it, but I'm gonna seed it. I got somebody that gave me several round bales and 500 small round bales, like the type you can pick up by hand, and I'm gonna spread them out all over the porous soil areas over the seeding and let it deteriorate in. I may even bring my herd of horses up here and trample it into the soil, kind of like Greg Judy does with trampling his forage in. So that's my ideas. I'm also going to have the dozer clear up these dozer piles that were left. I needed that done anyway. I've got 5 or 6 of them in this main ridge field. Smooth everything out. You can see a big stump hole here. Basically, I'm going to get this field hopefully smooth enough to where I could cut hay off of it someday when it's in good shape. I don't know that I ever will cut hay, but I want it finished. I'm going to be here the rest of my life, and I want it to be nice. And it's got to produce better than this to be able to graze. That's my plan. I probably will lime it and fertilize it too this spring, lightly. Once again, I can't afford to do much, but I'll put, you know, a couple $1,000s worth of lime on it out of a buggy that I can rent from the MFA. That's about all I can afford to do. And we'll see if it helps. This is the most established area because, you know, I kind of cleared and seeded as I went, and you can see the stump holes all through here. You know, like this is a big stump hole, and then there's another one, more dozer piles. So we're gonna try to get this in pretty good shape. Fortunately, this area in here has really good dirt. There's not much rock in it. Around the edges is a lot of rock, but also around the edges is where my best grass is. As you'll learn if you watch Greg Judy's channel, what happened was all my nutrients were up here and all my seed was up here, and I'd burn it off, make it look like a golf course, and it would all wash off off the hill. Well, them edges were catching some of that, you know, nutrients that I'm washing off my field that I'd paid to get here. So live and learn. Once I do get grass, maybe by this fall, if I'm going to graze it lightly before I clip it, what I'll do is I'll do a rotation up here where I have paddocks and just graze them a few days at a time. I won't graze it very heavy, and then next year I'll make sure I start implementing a rotational grazing program, and we'll go down off the hill and talk more about that, because I've got problems all over my farm, not just the ridge field. So like I said, Greg Judy inspired me to fix all of them, and I have plans, probably 4 or 5 step plan, and we're going to go through it now. Okay, everybody, look at this spot right here. This is where I've got my protein tub that the mares can eat on. And just look at how this ground is chopped up and dug in around here. Might be an arrowhead right there. Nope, it's trash. The horses are just got it down to bare dirt. This was a good stand of fescue. And then another thing I'm noticing, look how much manure piles there are out in this field. Well, that's because this is where I'm spreading my hay out every snow and every day during the winter to let them eat hay, because it's convenient and close to the barn. But I got to thinking that maybe I can better utilize the horse's natural tendency to do these two things in a spot where it would be beneficial to me, because right now this is ruining one of the thickest patches of fescue and thick grass on my farm. So let's go see what I had in mind. Whew. So I got the tub loaded up, and hay and a mineral block in there, and now I'm trying to bring my girls along. Look how pregnant Soix looks. Well, this one looks pregnant too. Who's that? That's Jessie. Boy, she's big around. Got Chablis down there, very pregnant as well. Come on, girls, come on. Ooh, Lucky wants to eat. We'll bring them along to the spot I want to show you. Okay, this is the spot I wanted to show you. As you can see, this whole hillside is covered by a weird, noxious weed. It gets super thick. I don't know what it is. I believe it's a type of sedge. And it goes up to right about where that dog is and arches up to that broom sedge. Goes, this whole hillside is junk. If I can get them to trample this hillside down to dirt, then overseed it, spread their manure and the extra carbon from the hay, I can get a bunch of bare spots between now, which is January 4th, and March, and then I can overseed it, maybe roll out a ram bale on top of it, and have it naturally go from this invasive sedge back to a good grass that's actually beneficial to my pasture. So instead of trampling the good grass up front, we're going to trample this undesirable grass and see if we can change the biology of this area. I'll spread that out and show you what I did. Okay, so here's what I've done. Went right here to the thickest spot of it. Goes all the way up this hill, all the way to the road. And I put my mineral tub, so they'll wear this area out. Now every day, I'm feeding 2 bales of hay to this group, and I'm gonna spread it out like this and shake out my hay, which will be spreading seed, one, but also spreading manure and pee from these horses and trampling in this sedge. I call it a sedge. I'm gonna have to look it up or ask an expert at work what it is. Then here in another thick spot, I put a mineral block, which I'll be moving every time they get it down to bare dirt. I'll move the location of the mineral block and keep spreading hay down here all winter long, up and down the hill, all the way from the cedars back to the double red gates. This is the only patch of this type of grass I have on the place, and I don't want it to spread any further, because in the summertime it gets knee high, so thick the brush hog can barely cut through it, and they don't eat it. Nothing grazes it that I've seen. Of course, I haven't had goats or sheep on it, but the cows don't eat it, the horses don't eat it, and the brush hog can barely eat it. So last step will be about March, when I have a majority of manure piles in here. I'll take a pasture rake, basically some cattle panels with some tires wired to them, and drag them around with my four-wheeler, spread out the manure, and before that I'll overseed it with a good type of seed for the horses to continue packing it in and let the last few snows fall on that seed. There's our science experiment. We'll start following along with this area. Check in again this spring. Okay everybody, here is the next phase in my farm regeneration project. I have a 3-year pile of manure from cleaning horse stalls, and this is a manure spreader that I borrowed from my friend Wayne Jones. I probably shouldn't have said that, because he probably doesn't want to be loaning it out to other people that know him. But he's a good guy, he wants to help me out. And I have several places here in my bottom field that the horses just don't graze in the summertime. So like right here in this bottom, there's 100 square yards that they just never graze, and it's kind of gravelly and doesn't grow good. There's another spot down there that doesn't grow good, kind of poor soil. I'm going to spread my whole manure pile over that and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm hoping it keeps the flies down around my barn, get rid of the manure pile, and I'll spread out my some of this carbon and fertilizer and manure back onto my fields. So that's what we're going to be doing today. See here, there's just gravel all through here. Well, what happened is we have this beautiful little creek that flows down through our farm. Well, that creek has washed gravel over that, or has been moved over the years, over the centuries, and this whole low area doesn't grow grass and they don't graze it. So this is where I'm going to focus on spreading most of the manure pile, but then also from right there to right there, there's like a bare spot that they don't graze much in the summer. I'm going to spread a bunch there as well. Okay, so we've talked about a few of the plans of actions that I have to try to regenerate my farm and get the grass growing and fix some of the mistakes I've made. The last one I'm going to do, that's going to take more than, 1 year even, but we're going to implement it this spring, is a rotational grazing. So I'm going to put in a hot wire with a high tensile electric fence on the inside of my perimeter fences. I'm going to run another one up the center of this valley, kind of crossing back and forth across the creek. And then this 35-acre pasture that runs from my parents down to the river, I'm going to do probably 12 leapfrogged paddocks with temporary fence going from the hot wire in the bottom up to the fence where I'll have another hot wire. And I'm going to rotate all my horses up one side, cross the creek, and go back down the other side. Then behind us on this hill, we're going to have a small sheep and goat pasture that I'll also graze the horses in. And it's woven wire, but I'm going to have a hot wire around it too. And I might try to split it into 2 paddocks, like a high and a low, where it comes down to the creek where they can get water, which will then also, it's separate from this pasture that goes along the creek to the left. So then we can have that as a turnout paddock.
And that runs all the way along.
All the way along the road. And then I've got to figure out a way how to do rotational grazing on the ridge field too. It's difficult up there because it's so big and wide. It would take a lot of fence to be able to partition it off, but we'll figure out a way. And I'm going to keep these horses rotating and try to be able to stockpile more grass for winter next year. And we'll see how that works. I might even have to try to get them off of my pasture to try to be able to stockpile some and maybe rent a little pasture nearby. But we've already got started on several of my other ideas on how to fix the ridge field. Like for instance, here's my hay bale unroller. It's not completely finished yet, but I have to put stops to keep it from falling so low. Like I don't want it to fall below that low so that the hay bale is centered above the axle. So I have to put stops on. I still have to mount my winch, but it's working. So, once the winch is on, it would hold this up at the hay bale height. I got my spikes, take the chain out, back it in over. This doesn't let the spike come all the way out. Shove it in the hay bale. Hook the chain on where it won't pull out of the hay bale, and then I can unroll hay bales on the ridge field. Still a little work to do on this. The dozer never showed up on the ridge field yet. It's a work in progress. Stay tuned and we'll see how they all turn out.